Whenever you're ready.
Just let me know whenever you need it.
But you need it.
No, you can talk, because you're across the room, it's going to interfere with the presentation if you hand the book back. So yeah, you can keep it there, it's fine. Let me just get to it.
Oh, you use the book in your presentation?
No, I don't have it completely memorized yet. It's fine, we can go though, we're good. Alright, ready? Okay. And go. Hi guys, we are the Team Cowboys, and we are going to talk to you guys about the 5 most important things that we learned in chapter 4 of our book. My name's Mohammed.
Hi everyone, my name is Jesus.
My name is Tham.
And we're going to go ahead and start. The first point that I want to discuss with you is the possible content that you could be researching for your presentation. Whenever you start your presentation, you should first determine what you already know about your topic at hand. Determining what you already know about your topic at hand lets you create your own personal presentation strategy and lets you focus on a general presentation purpose. There are many purposes your presentation could have, such as to inform the audience or to persuade them, to enhance their skill and knowledge, or even entertain and engage them. Whenever you're trying to figure out what you already know, it's best to sort out your ideas using different techniques. The first technique you could do would be to data dump. Data dumping is where you essentially brainstorm different ideas about what you have about your topic at hand and write down as much information as you can. Once you have done that, then you can try a technique called mind mapping. Mind mapping is where you took all the information that you took from the data dumping stage and then you organize it and make it more cohesive and make it flow better. After that, we move on to the second point, which is research. This is a stage where you determine what you need to know, as opposed to the last stage where you determine what you already know. Whenever you're doing your research, it's always important to check different resources and to go beyond Google and Wikipedia. And whenever you go on Google and Wikipedia, it's best to keep the idea that yes, this is a good place to jumpstart your research, but also you must maintain the idea that it's not always, the information on there is not always valid. It's always important to make sure you evaluate each source's reputation. For example, I went on Wikipedia and I typed in World War II, and immediately I scrolled to the bottom and found the references page. This page right here is at the bottom of every Wikipedia article that you will find, and it shows you exactly where you found all the information on that website, sorted out by date. And when we talk about the date, it's a little reminder to help you whenever you're redoing your research on Wikipedia, that if you find if you find a source with a date, that's a pretty good indicator that yes, it is a valid source. Now I'm going to go into point 3, and I'm going to toss it over to Jesus.
Thank you, Mohammed. After you have gathered and focused and organized the information from your research, now it's time to decide and strategize how to deliver that presentation. Many times presentations are like documents. They both have 3 parts: opening, body, and closing. Many presenters decide to go straight to the body. This helps them to ensure a clear structure. Some of the presenters decide to do chronologically. First, they decide how to open the presentation, they organize the body into their presentation, and then they decide how to close. Prepare this in a sequence that works for you. Opening is crucial. It sets the stage, builds interest in your topic, and it gives an idea and a preview of what you're going to talk about. Grab their attention. Examples of grabbing their attention could be a question. You can ask a question to the audience, tell a story, or you can do a little bit of humor. That's all about right now.
Okay. And then what's going to be, once we decide how to do once we have our audience's attention, once we decide on how we're going to get our audience's attention, we now focus on...
Introduce him.
Oh, I'm just finishing his slide for him.
Oh, okay.
It's just that I don't know the information.
Okay.
He doesn't have all the information yet, so
Okay.
I'm going to finish his slide
Okay.
for it now. Once we decide on our audience's, how we're going to get our audience's attention, we then focus on the body of the presentation. The body of the presentation is where most of the information is, and we have to decide on how we're going to disperse the information. And there's two different methods. There's a tell presentation and a sell presentation. A tell presentation is where we stand here and inform the audience of our information and tell them everything, versus a sell presentation where we stand here and we try to persuade them to take a course of action. We try to get them to buy our ideas. We then focus on transitioning into different sections. There's two different types of transitions, the backward look and the forwards look. For example, you could say, our backward look is where we look behind, we use information from our past to move us forward, versus a forwards look, which is where we look towards the future and try to keep the audience guessing. For example, a backwards look could be, now that I've highlighted the financial incentives, ... versus, and now I'm going to tell you why wind turbines are quieter than you might think, ... Another example for a backwards look could be, so it's clear to me that we need to do better listening by, versus, we also need to change the way we work, which leads us to ... And now I'm actually going to apply a forward look transition by tossing it over to Tan, who's going to talk to us about receiving questions.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about question and answer in question and answer session. When we make the presentation, we need to decide how to handle question and answer session, Q&A in short. We decide how to hold the question at the end of your talk, or let the people ask the question go out. It depends on how you refer, how the audience expects. Holding the question at the end of talk, so you can control the schedule and flow of information. And if you have people ask them go out, so people, listener can get clarification when they need. And if in the Q&A session, you need to encourage listener to ask a question by open the door for question. Don't just ask them yes or no question. Use the open-ended question like tell me about something, for example. And you need keep eye contact with audience and blow to them and keep silent, let them the time to talk. And the last point is active listening, paraphrasing, why we need to restate every question, because we need the time to gather our talk so we can rely for them. And some people cannot see the question clearly because they sit far from over there. So we need to restate the question so everybody can understand it, and make sure that you and when you restate the question, so the questioner know that you did understand their idea. It prevent the miscommunication. Now I transfer to the Muhammad to the point 5.
And now I'm going to talk to you about the 5th point, which is answering questions. Whenever you answer a question, it's always important to make sure that you stay on your message and also be brief and concise. You only have your audience's attention for about 15 to 20 seconds, so it's important to take all the information that you want to give out and condense it so you can move on to the next question. By maintaining a low delivery time, you also maintain your audience's involvement, because by answering a question fast enough, you enable the next person to ask their question, and it just keeps the whole flow more. It keeps the flow of the whole format. However, during a presentation, you might come across challenging questions and hostile audience members. Whenever you come across a challenging question, it's always important to make sure that you it's always important to make sure that whenever you come across a challenging question or an unclear question, it's always important to make sure that you answer in an I format versus a you format. Answering a question, for example, such as, I'm not sure I understand the question versus your question is confusing, it comes off as an indirect method and will ensure that you keep your air of professionalism that you have when you're giving a presentation. Another type of challenging question could be limiting questions or I don't know questions. Those are the kinds of questions where you just honestly don't know the answer, and it's okay to know that it's okay not to know the answer. It's just best to be honest as opposed to making something up. And a way to get around that would be to just say, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question. However, I can guide you towards a source that might actually have the answer. It also shows that it also maintains your validity of your research that you've done and shows that you actually do know your subject, just not completely. And now finally, I'm going to talk to you about hostile audience members. Hostile audience members come in different ways, and they have different types. However, the main thing that you should keep, the main knowledge that you should know is that you must stay polite no matter what. Staying polite will help you disperse any negative emotions that the audience members are giving off, and will help you to control the presentation, as opposed to just going off on them and being direct. Another thing that you should do is try to stop the offenders tactfully, perhaps by putting up your hand and stopping the questions and moving and saying, I'm sorry, but we're going to move on to the next section. It will maintain your control of the presentation, and it will help you to transition into another area. And finally, that's the conclusion. Okay, now I was going to ask you, what was a good way to conclude from that?
What did you have?
The last thing right there is basically the tips on how to deal with hostile.
So what do you have on the conclusion slide?
Thank you for listening and questions.
You could review.
Review?
You could, that's sometimes, and you're at almost 12 minutes.
Okay.
Not quite 12 minutes. You've got plenty of time.
Yeah, and plus I'm pretty sure the conclusion, if I had gone through, I could have gone 13 maybe, if I reviewed. If I had actually finished the conclusion slide, I'm pretty sure I could have gone at least 13 if I did a breakdown like you said.
Right. I mean, you could just do a breakdown on a general outline, right? Where you maybe say one sentence about the different parts,
okay,
right, of your presentation.
Okay.
Right? So, or you could see, how did you open? Just talked about.
I said, I opened by saying, hi, we're here to talk to you all about the 5 most interesting things that we learned in chapter 4.
Okay, so you could work it into your Q&A. You could tell a story. You can always tell a story. You can open with a story and end with a story, right? You need to talk about a hook. You talk about an attention grabber, but you didn't have one.
Okay.
Right? So that's something that you could do to increase the impact and the time of your presentation, is start with a story and end with a story. So if you had a personal story about a huge failure that you had, or whoever the opening speaker is, and then if you had applied some of these principles, it would have helped you. And then you come full circle at the end and you talk about another time where you applied some of these principles and avoided that pitfall, right?
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be a real story, but it's nice if it is a personal, tell it like it is,
okay,
a personal story. So that would just be one way to do that. And then in your conclusion, instead of reviewing, you could
reference that story again.
Yeah, reference that story, but on a positive note this time.
Yeah, because like I had a presentation last week. We had to do a current event thing, and the topic we had, it was basically we had to present about 10 minutes and then keep a class discussion for like 50 minutes or so. So my topic was gender neutral bathrooms, but what I did was I introduced the story, right? I had the video and I had a personal story about how my friend came out as transgender, and then towards the end of the presentation I referenced that story Midnight said now he has to, so I guess I could do something like that similar, but
Sure,
here.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but it would be about a presentation that would apply to.
Yeah, about
the
presentation
stuff
here.
you're gonna talk
Okay.
about.
All right.
Right? It could even be like the worst presentation you ever heard.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a personal story, but it's kind of fun for them if you tell how you fell flat on your face.
Okay.
You know, but then you have a success at the end of it, right? So instead of having conclusion, thank you, and questions, that would be one way. Full circle, remember,
Okay,
is
full
always a
circle.
good idea.
Okay.
And don't forget to work in those examples. Now, I had a couple of questions. Let me turn this off.